Thank you for joining us on the third episode of the Pain to Purpose podcast. Today, I have the immense pleasure of welcoming Stephan Ouaknine. Stephan is the founder and managing partner of clean tech company Inerjys. With over 20 years of experience as an entrepreneur and investor, Stephan has been a visionary leader across multiple technology sectors, from telecommunications to clean technology. Stephan is a member of the Clinton Global Initiative, the TED community, a speaker at the United Nations annual COP, and a recipient of the annual honorary award from the Canadian Tachyon Society. Along his journey, Stephan dove deep into holotropic breathwork and is now a world-renowned breathwork facilitator, father of 3, social media influencer, and awesome human. Stephan, it is such an honor to have you here today.
Thank you, Aurelie.
Thank you for being here. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm in a good mood today.
Awesome. I love it. I love it. So we're going to start with, really breath work.
Okay.
Because that's how we met, through breath work. And for me, it has been such a powerful modality for healing and release and all of that. So let's explain to the audience what breathwork is, how it works, how you got into it.
Sure. Breathwork is a technique of breathing cyclically deeply with an open mouth in our technique, all the way up and then all the way down. And as soon as you exhale, you re-inhale. So it's very cyclical and different from the way that people breathe in a fairly under-oxygenated society. People don't breathe enough, don't take deep breaths enough, and then they notice that. What breathwork does is it brings connection to yourself, to your higher self, to your truth, and then to all of the divinity, we can call it, that lives around you. So your connection to your version of God or your version of that higher power. Breathwork brings calm, breathwork brings clarity, breathwork allows people to up-level their game. So yes, it can heal traumas from the past, but it's not just about helping you move past old wounds. It's also about raising your vibration. It's about achieving your highest potential and your highest authenticity. And I've always been fascinated by that as a concept, is like, how can we be the best version of ourselves in this life, in this body, and not waste our time. I think when people get very anxious, it's because they are feeling stuck in their lives, that they're not progressing, right? When you procrastinate on something, you feel anxious about it. When you start activating, even if you're doing uncomfortable and difficult things, you feel better about yourself because you know you've activated, right? So breathwork helps to move that stuck energy and helps to get you there. How I found it was, I was at a period in my life where I was working on multiple businesses and very image conscious and very worried about the perception of myself as a business leader and as a community leader and, as a great husband and a good father and all the things, a good friend, a good son, all that. But somehow I was feeling like a little bit misaligned from my truth, like I was feeling a pull towards spirituality. I was feeling a pull towards things like yoga and things like meditation and all these other things that were a little bit different from what my community and the people that I grew up with were doing. So I started to feel like I was wearing a mask, and that mask was starting to make me feel anxious, and that anxiety was getting more and more severe, and I was not used to feeling any anxiety. I was a confident, popular person, and I was just kind of bulldozing my way through life. And so this was a new sensation. And I took the bull by the horns. I didn't want to feel this way, so I started to figure out ways of bringing calm and peace and clarity. I got to breathwork eventually, and that was for me a game changer. And when I realized the power that it had to help me, And by no means am I, done with my journey and my growth and my healing journey. We're always evolving, of course.
Of course.
But when I realized how helpful it had been for me, I'm a projector in human design. I wanted to give it back. I wanted to teach it. I wanted to show it. So I got certified and learned all the science and everything else that there is to learn around the history of it. And then started leading people one-on-one, and then one-on-one led to groups, and then groups led to corporate, and then corporates, which I already had a lot of experience in business. And then corporates led to festivals, and all of a sudden you've got 500 or 1,000 people in a field living this moment together. So it's been amazing, and as I see the future for where I take this, I think there's so many directions to take this, but the ultimate goal is to share it with as many people as possible of various different types of communities, and really help the individual raise their vibration.
I love that. That's so awesome. So I have so many questions just with what you shared with us. So, well, the first thing I want to say that I think is so important for people to understand is that anxiety is not some disorder or disease. And if you feel anxious, and you said it so perfectly, it's because you're not aligned with your true self, right? When there's that décalage, right?
Yeah.
The anxiety comes up.
Mm-hmm.
And anxiety is actually positive because it's like a signal that says something's off, something's wrong. So people are get nervous about having anxiety, but anxiety is our smoke alarm that says look inward.
Yeah.
So amazing that you...
I can add something to that thought that really helped me a lot to reframe anxiety and to reframe fear and to reframe all of those unpleasant feelings. I remember, being fearful, right? My mother is fearful in many ways. And, I thought I was much more like my grandmother, who was a real badass and very fearless. But I have a lot more similarities to my mother than I was giving myself credit for. And I'm learning that over time. My mother's an amazing, amazing woman.
Oh, I know. I know you.
But she's...
Stephan's mom was my elementary teacher.
At Solomon Schechter.
Solomon Schechter, the best teacher ever.
Madame Ouaknine,
Yeah.
Oh my God, she was my favorite teacher. My whole life people come up to me, oh, your mother. So my mother, had some trauma when she was younger, ripped out of Egypt for being Jewish, kicked out, you have 24 hours to leave the country.
Wow.
Her uncle was thrown in prison, and then she gets to Canada, and her father, when she was a teenager, dies of a massive stroke on the bed while she was in the apartment. So my mother had, these fears baked in that ended up leading her to feel fearful about other things. And somehow that fear a little bit got implanted into me. So I made a real priority of being fearless in business and taking risks and moving to Israel when I was graduating McGill, because I wanted to be in technology and high tech, and that was an incredible place to do that. So I did a lot of fearless things, but within those things, I had fears of going on a roller coaster or a bungee jump or, adrenaline junkie things, jumping out of a plane. And when I started feeling this misalignment and the anxiety, I started being afraid of my body's reaction to the anxiety.
Yeah.
The fear of the fear.
Yeah, the fear of the feeling.
Because the unpleasantness of the pressure. So you're not sure that you trust your body. And you need to relearn that you can trust your body, that you're much more resilient than you believe. So the thing I wanted to offer is that when I started to reframe fear and anxiety as more than a smoke alarm, love, self-love. What if we viewed it as our own built-in mechanism to love ourselves enough to help ourselves heal and grow and move past those fears and see our blind spots? What if those fears are like a roadmap to where we need to do work or where we're misaligned? And so some people, in fact, sadly, many people will stick their heads in the sand and pretend or repress those things. Yep. So because it's very unpleasant to have to deal with them. But of course, the body intelligence will keep bringing it up for you. It'll keep showing up. It'll manifest in different ways until you deal with it.
Yeah, 100%.
And so if you're in a relationship that needs work or needs to end, if you are in the wrong job or the wrong career, if you are doing certain things that you're not proud of and you keep repeating those patterns because you're stuck in a perpetual loop, whatever the thing is, treat those fears and those anxieties as not the monster in the corner that wants to come kill you. Treat them as, self-love from your higher self and your connection to divinity. Like if you believe in God, right? God wants this for me. God wants me to move past this because God made me in his image and wants me to be beautiful and happy and at peace and living in my nervous system that is called the parasympathetic nervous system, which is meant to be my default system of everything is okay, I feel safe, I'm in the present moment, I'm not fixating on yesterday or tomorrow. And so getting there using various modalities is important, but demystifying or defanging the fear and the anxiety and reframing them as self-love is a powerful way to give yourself the confidence to start working on those things.
100%.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I always say, thank you, anxiety, I'm safe now.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing your job. I'm safe now. I love that, 100%.
And one thing about breath work that I loved was when anxiety would show up, the first place you're affected is your chest and your breathing and your lungs. So when you, and see that breath was required because when I said that, it brought me back to when I felt those feelings, so I wanted to cleanse that thought by doing a breath.
Yeah.
When you know you have the tool of being able to master your breath, then you have a lot more confidence to face your anxieties. Because you know that if you're going to do something, let's say that you're claustrophobic, let's say you're afraid to be in a tunnel or on a bridge, and yet you face, going in that tunnel, and you know that you're going to be uncomfortable. If you know that panic is going to set in, and you have a breathwork practice, you know that you'll be able to breathe cyclically and restore calm within 10 breaths or 20. And so just the knowledge that you have a tool in a toolkit will help give you the confidence to go do the scary thing.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Awesome. You use the word vibration.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that a little bit.
Okay.
Let's explain to our audience what vibration is, and maybe in scientific terms, in spiritual terms. Go for it.
I mean, you know what a frequency is from, like, if you're old enough, from a radio, right?
You're old enough.
You're tuning a dial to a frequency.
Yeah.
So those are radio frequencies, right? In scientific terms, I was in telecom for many years, so I could go into great detail, but I'll spare you guys. But there are, radio frequencies that are being emitted, and when there is a communication handshake, that information begins to flow, like the radio station, or like back in the day when we had a modem, that was another kind of communication handshake. You hopping on the internet, on the World Wide Web. So those are examples of, frequencies, if you want to call them, okay? Vibration suggests that everything has an electric charge. Everything has some sort of energy associated to it. Everything.
Yeah.
Every human being, every intention and thought, every plant. If you're really sensitive to energies, you could run your hand over a plant above it and feel the vibration coming off of the plant, the energy coming off the plant. And it's not body heat, right? Because a plant isn't particularly hot on the inside, so you're not feeling thermal energy, you're feeling vibration. So if we believe that to be true for a plant, which it is, then the same can be true for another living being like a human. So you have a frequency, a vibration, I have a vibration. Now, your vibration is fed, nourished by everything that you consume. You can be at a low vibration, a medium vibration, a high vibration based on the toxicity in your life, the acidity of your diet, the alkalinity of your body. All of these things will affect your vibration. What do you watch? Are you watching, reality TV that's ridiculous? Are you scrolling on TikTok all day long? Are you on Instagram comparing yourself with people? Low, low, low. Are you addicted to porn? Low vibration. What are your intimate connections like?
What are you eating?
Are you in a bunch of toxic relationships where people are throwing each other under the bus and saying mean things to each other and making each other feel bad, but staying in those relationships? Again, low vibration. And I can give 100 other examples. How do you feed yourself? Are you going constantly for, fast food and foods that are not whole foods that are from the earth, right? On and on and on. Low vibration. In the law of attraction, which many of us know about, and if you read the book The Secret, like an Oprah and all those thoughts, it's about, people think law of attraction is attracting what I want, what I desire, what I want to manifest. Well, it's not. The law of attraction is not Santa Claus. It's not here to just give you manna from the heavens.
Absolutely.
The law of attraction is you attract what you are. So back to vibration. If you're vibrating low, you're going to attract low. And if you vibrate high, you're going to attract that vibration. And it can happen in micro moments. It's not like binary, like it's all or nothing. Like you have to fully make yourself the Buddha on the mountain and only then can you attract good things. No, if you take a good positive decision, one, a great salad. In my case, for my birthday, I treated myself to an ecstatic dance because I needed to move energy and kind of sweat and be in that community. Then something amazing will come to you because the universe will reward you for the high vibrational decision that you took. Okay? And something, for example, at that ecstatic dance happened for me that was beautiful and unexpected and high vibrational. So that's how I want people to imagine. You attract what you are, and what you are is a sense of a vibration, which can be scientifically captured with various types of cameras. Or physically felt. If you start doing a breath work and you activate your energy, it's like fanning the flames of your energy, right? Whatever was your energy field, your vibration, is going to get enhanced a little bit. So you know how sometimes when people walk into a room, they're so magnetic, they have such a presence that everybody turns, they didn't even speak, but that person just, and then other people are so insular and so closed down that their energy field is very, 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 very small. So that's a function of vibration, right? When you do breath work and you start fanning those flames, you'll start to feel tingles and energy coming off of your body. You can feel it. You can almost manipulate the energy as this like invisible ball of your own power. And I tell people it's not thermal energy. When you do this, it's not like you're feeling your own body heat. That is the tingles and what you're feeling is your own vibration. And as a facilitator, I can feel the difference between vibrations that are big or small, vibrations that are chaotic and very calm, very peaceful and happy and joyful, and vibrations that are filled with trauma, where I literally feel like coming through, even without physically touching the person, just near and trying to move that energy, coming through my hands is like their pain. I can feel it. So yeah, that's a very long-winded way of saying vibration is very real. It's very powerful, and becoming aware of it is the first step towards mastering it.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. And I want to, if I may, I'm just going to add that the more you heal the wounds and the traumas, and you were talking about your mom and what she brought, generational trauma even, the more you free yourself from those energies of, grief and guilt and shame and anger and resentment, all of that, you cleanse yourself from that, you release that, and the more access you have to a higher vibration of love, of joy, etc. Right?
Yes. Okay. and this life is beautiful and messy and complicated. So we have to get away from the thinking that you're on a healing journey and one day you're just going to tick the box and be like, I'm healed, done and done.
Totally.
Doesn't work like that. Ça marche pas comme ça.
Totally.
While you're busy healing, in parallel, something might happen.
Yeah.
You could have done amazing things and then all of a sudden have a really painful breakup.
Yeah.
And your heart is broken and you're like, but no, I was healing, I was doing good, and now I'm sad again.
Yeah.
That's the dance. That's the dance. And so embracing it is your key towards being at peace and dancing with all the ups and downs of life.
Yeah.
But refusing to accept what is and needing to put on a mask of I am healed, I am spiritual, I am evolved is going to lead you to more suffering because you know that you're full of shit.
Yeah.
Even if you're pretending really well and you're convincing a lot of people, it doesn't matter. Inside you know you're full of shit.
100%.
So the imposter syndrome sets in and here we are, back at square one, more anxiety. Sure, because you're misaligned again.
Yeah, 100%.
So the point I'm making is we have to be okay with the dance of life, to romanticize all the ups and downs of life. What would be the point if it was always rainbows and unicorns? Wouldn't that be monotone? Right? Isn't life more beautiful because we go through challenges and we overcome difficult things and then we appreciate the beauty even more? Right?
100%. Like I think I said this on the previous episode, where my clients, I'm a healer, so my clients come to me and they go, how long is this going to take? When am I going to be healed?
Yeah.
Like it's like you're going to get to the top of the mountain. And I'm like, I can't answer that question. It's a journey. And the truth is, the happiness and the inner peace comes from the journey.
Yeah.
Not from the peak of the mountain. It comes from the growth.
Yeah.
That's what brings us, that happiness, that joy, that inner peace. And like you said, embracing that journey for sure.
So you wanted to talk about authenticity.
Yeah.
And so to that point, when you're truly, authentic, you start to recognize the things that make you happy, the things that make you feel aligned or vibrating well, or, So like for me, this conversation is aligned with what I want to be doing. So I'm, happy to be doing it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even matter to me how many people end up. Did you notice I didn't ask you how big your audience was? Because I believe in the ripple effect. I switched over from this hyper-egoic place that I was in when I was younger, which is fine. That was part of my journey. And the ego is a part of who we are. I believe in immaculate design, human design. So if the ego is in us, then it's meant to be there for a reason. It's not meant to be there so we could murder it.
100%.
But maybe it shouldn't drive the bus. Maybe
Yeah.
it shouldn't drive every decision.
Yeah.
So when I was more like that, okay, I was like, in a place of needing to be, perfect in everything I did. And of course, that's a recipe for, being
Disaster.
unhappy. So when you start listening, really listening to what makes you feel good, then you start doing the things that feel good. And I stopped needing to quantify my impact. So older me would have said, how many people in your audience and is it worth my time? Newer me says ripple effect. I'm a little pebble and I get thrown into a body of water. And whatever, ripple effect. So if one of the people that watches this is inspired and then passes something along from our conversation to a child, to an anxious teenager, or to a friend, and then that reverberates, to having the teenager. My teenage kids went from, like laughing, about all these woo-woo things that Dad was doing, to asking for breathworks and having their teen friends say, could they come over and, Dad, can you, because I cook, can you cook a meal? And then my friends want to do breathwork.
Wow.
And I mean, I can't tell you what that feels like. It's a huge, it's a special, prideful moment for me to feel like it's being well received and adds value. And the kids that did it once want to come back and do it more because it felt good, So it's about not obsessing over the bigness of everything that you're doing and just letting it be beautiful and believing in the organic, natural process. So in climate change terms, I work on clean tech and working on healing the planet also, not the individual only, but also the planet with renewable energy technologies and all these other things we do and, agricultural technologies and everything to decarbonize. Initially, again, chest pounding, Stephan, was, wanting to quantify the exact amount of cooling that I affected on the planet, like as if I was wearing a Superman cape, and that was the wrong way to think. It was a recipe for a lot of suffering. It's not happening fast enough, it's not big enough. I wanted to raise an even bigger fund. It's a lot of weight to put on your own shoulders. Nobody put that weight on my shoulders. Only I did. We're our own worst enemy sometimes.
100%.
And the only person who can alleviate that suffering is ourselves.
Yeah.
No person can come and tell you, don't put that pressure on yourself. You're not going to listen. You have to go through the process yourself. And so today, I feel like each company we invested in, each project we work on, does good in its own way. And, again, it's that pebble, just like I talked about here in the podcast. The ripple effect is enough for me. And I'm at peace with whenever my time will be finished in this earthly body, I will have done the best I could to make a difference. And that's all any of us can do.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. So let me ask you, you're talking about authenticity and being yourself. So if somebody asks you, Stephan, what does it mean to be yourself? How can I be myself? What are you going to answer?
I think the first thing is, to ask the question, have I taken the time to really get to know myself and fall deeply in love with myself? Or is my sense of self actually a version of who I'm supposed to be that was passed along to me by parents and other caregivers, teachers, friends, whatever, my community?
Society, culture.
Society. He's good at math, so he should be an accountant. He likes to argue, so go be a lawyer. This one is scientific, be a doctor. And we create these identities for ourselves about things that we think we're good at and bad at, and how we surround ourselves. I'm friends with these types of people, but not those types of people. There's a lot of generational judgment. And so you could get very cloudy in your mind about who you really are. And it's very hard to be authentic if you don't know yourself or accept yourself. In a breathwork session, when I ask people, when they're really in this kind of state, and I ask them to put their hands on their heart, high on your own supply, a good kind of high.
Yeah.
I ask them to put their hands on their heart and say, I love you in their own name. And if it's a different language that they came from, say it in your native tongue. And you wouldn't believe how hard it is for people to say those words. And I make them repeat it and repeat it and repeat it. It's the hardest thing to say out loud in front of somebody, I love you, Stephan. I accept you, Stephan. I make them say, I accept you, Stephan. So that's a litmus test for how ready are you to be authentic. If you don't love yourself and you don't accept yourself, and you're living someone else's version of who you should be, then it's really hard to show up authentically. And that's why you see selfies in the street and all these, attempts to puff up lips and all these attempts to put, filters on, and just, we can't simply accept who we are truly, our look, what's in our heart, all that stuff. So that's what I would say is the first step is really get to know yourself and strip away the layers of things that were superimposed onto you. So, and that's hard to do. Easier said than done.
Very.
You don't want to disappoint people, especially parents, like we live for our parents and they screwed us up in many ways, but they did their best and they loved us.
Yeah.
And it's so complicated. I love them, but I hate them. I appreciate them, but why'd they screw me up so badly? Why I have to go to therapy because of them?
Yeah.
It's so complicated, right?
Yeah.
So the first step to discovering your own authenticity is shedding the layers of things, getting to know the things that were superimposed onto you, and standing there naked, metaphorically naked, or maybe literally naked in front of the mirror, and just get to know who you are and what feels good, and listen to that energy, listen to it. For example, I'll give one example and then I'll let you ask the next question.
No, continue.
With relationships with people, friendships, people in your life, new people, old people, whatever. You know that there's some people that feel intuitively like an energy suck, like an energy drain. Like when you're with them, you're exhausted.
Yeah.
And you don't even know why you're exhausted. You're not particularly doing anything exhausting. And then other people, you're uplifted, you're energized. And right, if over the course of time, if you see consistently that you're energized here and you're exhausted here, then that is an example of authenticity. You vibrate with that person that uplifts you, you feel received, supported, and you feel like you can be your truest self. And so it's lighter, and so you're not working as hard, and so you're not exhausted. And you're even maybe excited. You're, picotant, you're sparkly.
Yeah.
Those other people, you got to be a version of yourself. Some friends, old friends, that are judgy. We've all had judgmental friends. It feels like talking to the high school principal. My God, it's exhausting. And so after one time and 10 times and 40,000 times, you can finally give yourself permission to make changes, not from a place of malice or bad intentions, from a place of honoring where you're at. This feels good, this feels like shit. So now it's up to you. This is your choice. Do you want to keep continuing the things that don't feel good, or do you want to choose what feels right?
100%. And I think that applies not only to relationships, but to everything. The work we do, the area we live in.
Yeah.
Everything.
Everything.
Whatever excites you.
I discovered that I love gathering in community. I think community is beautiful. And I grew up in the Jewish community in Montreal, and boy, do we have a strong and beautiful community.
Yeah.
But the Jewish community sometimes have some people that have a vibe of like, but this is our community and this is it. Like, don't go beyond this community because these are your people. I don't like that. I'm a humanist. I believe we're all the same. I believe that we all have the same organs and the same beliefs and the same, core values, that what we want for our lives, what we want for our children. That's why I believe in peace, in the midst of all these wars. That's why I do my best to go out and build bridges instead of create walls, because I don't want to perpetuate the violence, I don't want to continue seeing people suffer and die. And so I discovered that gathering in community in festivals and dancing and ecstatic dancing with amazing DJs and doing yoga and acro yoga and doing breathwork and having talks on sacred sexuality and having talks on different types of relationship styles. Some people want to be polyamorous and some people want to be an open, ethically non-monogamous. Some people love monogamy and all the different ways that you can be in relationship. And you're stimulated in so many ways in these festivals. A cacao ceremony, singing and chanting and dancing and face painting. And then there was mud one day because it was rain. So dancing in the mud. And then people even took their clothes off and were in the mud and then went swimming in the pond. Beautiful. And children were running around. And I thought to myself, how beautiful that people bring their children to this and expose them to this open-mindedness. And I know it sounds like hippie, flower power kind of stuff. It's just, you got a cross-section of society there. It's not a bunch of hippies. It's camping. It's out in nature, already good. And you got doctors and lawyers there and professionals and business leaders. And then you got people that are very blue collar and everything in between. So not typecasting, Anyway, I discovered that I really liked that. I thought it was gorgeous as a way to raise the vibration. That's a vibe. When I leave those festivals, you're at a high vibration. So many magical moments happened, and I lead breathworks in those. So, there's also that beautiful energy exchange with people where they catch you afterwards and hug you for like 10 seconds, 20 seconds because, oh my God, thank you. I cried my heart out and you really helped me and all that. And then when you're dancing that night, the eye contact is like an eye contact of open-hearted appreciation and mutual understanding. So all very beautiful. And I remember, I had been criticized by an old friend who said, oh my God, I saw that you were posting on your Instagram that, you're at this festival and you have face paint and you're wearing yoga pants. And then she said to me, you have children, like in an accusatory tone. I said, and I'll never forget that moment. I said, yes, I do. And I'm trying to teach them to be themselves. And this is me. I don't know. I don't think it's a bad thing. We're not, there's no bad values being
perpetuated,
being perpetuated or glamorized from these festivals. It's very healthy. I think what's unhealthy is when people, live a lie. Like, for example, monogamy. People will look at you and dead in the eyes and say, of course I'm monogamous. It's ridiculous to go out and think that you could see other people if you're in a core relationship. And that very person has, a lock on their phone, a code on their phone, and is having an affair, or is going on business trips and sleeping around. And it's a secret life. So people wear masks. We all know people that may be doing that, right? It's like a shocking number. So again, authenticity. Are you authentic because you're telling a good story, or are you authentic because, you say, well, actually, I want to try something different. And, there's a radical transparency that comes in relationships like that, where you tell each other everything. And how empowering that is. It's not for everybody, but even freeing yourself to ask that question is I think, beautiful and authentic. People suffer when they are lying to themselves and to others.
100%. And which brings me to my next question. What is love to you? What does love mean to you? What's your definition of love?
I love love. I love love. Since I'm a kid, I was a romantic.
Okay.
My whole life. Like I remember when I was in kindergarten asking Shari Mayman to tie my shoes fully because I had a crush on her.
Aww.
I think I kind of knew how to tie my shoes, but I still wanted her to do it. So I've always been a lover in that way. My God, when I met my ex-wife, I've never, that love at the beginning, she was my waitress, and I was like, fell in love at first sight with my waitress,
Wow.
And we had this whirlwind love affair and 20 years of beautiful family building and life building. And, even though that came to an end, I found a way to tie it with a bow, even though it was difficult in many ways, but to honor what we built instead of resent it or regret it. Of course not. And today where I am, what is love? Love is truth. Love is feeling safe. Love is when you can be really yourself with the person. Like every desire, and I'm not just talking about sexually, just every aspiration, every ambition, holding space for each other to be the greatest version of yourself. And love is very much, it starts in your own heart, like with yourself. Okay, I really believe that you cannot love others if you don't actually accept and love yourself. So your first loving relationship is with you.
Yeah.
And so I've stopped thinking about, again, all these evolutions with me. I used to think happy wife, happy life. You're kind of living to be, in service of the other person. And so when you think like that, and we're taught in our culture to sort of, put that kind of love on a pedestal, I think it's a mistake. I think that when you do that, you then take on the responsibility of the happiness of the other person onto your own shoulders.
Yeah.
And then if the other person has all kinds of issues that have nothing to do with you, childhood issues, unresolved traumas, and whatever their imposter syndromes, they're not happy in their career, they don't like their body, whatever. All of a sudden, their unhappiness becomes your burden and your failure. And boy, is that heavy. So we have to free ourselves of that. That is not love. I believe that we are in loving relationships kind of in parallel, hopefully driving in the same direction, wanting similar things for the future, but still honoring our own separate journey and supporting each other and loving each other along the way, but not taking on the other person's journey as if it's your own journey. So it's like two, little pebbles, to use that analogy again, rolling through life, through this beautiful experience of life, hopefully wanting the same things, but also giving each other the space to be individuals, and then you can work on yourself, love on yourself, and then show up better for your partner. So for me, love is truth, love is acceptance, love is a safe space, and love is expansive. Okay? Love is not something that's finite. It's not a zero-sum game. It's not that if you have a certain amount of children and then you have another child, you all of a sudden have less love for anybody. Love grows exponentially, and there is no limit to how much we're able to vibrate and how much we're able to be in the vibration, to use that word again, of love. Love is a vibration. It's the most powerful vibration.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, even when we look at conflicts in the world, okay, if we look at them, if we go downtown in Montreal and we want to yell over each other and throw stones at each other and wave flags at each other and poke our flags in the other person's belly, we are not speaking from a love vibration. We're not. We're not understanding and humanizing the suffering of the other. We're pointing fingers. We're in a mob mentality, and we need to get away from that. That is not the way we're going to heal the world, right? It's very low vibration when we don't listen to each other.
Yeah.
If we did in conflicts and wars, if we acted that way in relationships, like in our relationships, we'd all be getting divorced and miserable all the time.
100%.
Okay? We can't. We have to bring the same kind of ethos that we try to bring into our loving relationships into all the way that we look at geopolitics and climate change and the treatment of women and girls in the world and all the big issues. Come at it from a place of love.
I love that.
Ask yourself often, what would love do? Whenever you're faced with a question, with a dilemma, instead of trying to rationalize it in your reptilian brain that looks at, logic and looks at threats and looks at mitigation of risk, right? Ask yourself. So put away all that kind of thinking, like worst case scenario thinking. Ask yourself, what would love do? Think of love as a vibration and as an intelligent being. What would love do? And then do that.
I love that. I always say, any decision I have to make, I always ask myself first, Aurelie, am I coming from a place of love?
Yeah.
Like, what's the truth, Yeah. So I totally agree with that. So, you know what, let me ask you this. If you had like a magic wand, you're talking about geopolitics in the world, and you can fix anything in the world, what would you do?
I mean, first recognizing that there are things that need to be fixed. So I'm cognizant of the fact that some people might watch this, and I referred to the conflict in the Middle East, and just be like totally triggered. Oh, this guy, he's just talking about love and light. It's just bullshit.
Yeah.
It's so naive. Sometimes you have to fight. Sometimes you have to kill. I get it. but at a certain point, you have to ask, what's the solution? What's the solution? The solution isn't, killing everybody. That's not, kill them all is never a solution.
Yeah.
Okay? So you got to be solutions oriented in business. You got to be solutions oriented in your own personal wellness. You got to be solutions oriented in politics. Just generally collaborate and solutions oriented. So if I had a magic wand, I think I would hyper localize the task at hand. So if you look at all the problems in the world, all of them, let's talk about climate change, okay? You've got a warming planet, you've got individuals doing their best to try to green up their act, but knowing that big business and industry and government and whatnot are still polluting and feeling disenfranchised or disempowered. Like, how much can I affect it on my own because I compost and drink from a metal straw when China is polluting and has tons of coal plants, etc. So, when I look at wars, same thing. All the conflicts, they're long and they're complicated, and you can hold all the rallies and you can do all the things and still feel disempowered. When you look at, every other challenge that exists in the world, same issue. So what I would do with my magic wand is I would bring it so hyper-localized that I go to each individual and remind them of their own power, of their own connection to source and of divinity. So instead of a top-down approach to solving the world's problems, I would like a grassroots approach, because of course the people have power. And every time, the top tries to impose its will on the people, we end up with very difficult situations. So I would like to wake the people up to their own divinity and power. The people are always more powerful than the system. People can change systems, can change paradigms, can change entire political systems. People can be creative, people can innovate, right? Steve Jobs had created a commercial for Apple called "Here's to the Crazy Ones," and it's the crazy ones who believe that they can change the world that do. I love that. I love that thought. Amelia Earhart is featured, and Jim Henson and Richard Branson and Alfred Hitchcock. I'm remembering the commercial, and Muhammad Ali. Think about all these people, Nelson Mandela, who changed the status quo. Right? We had an apartheid state in South Africa, and then all of a sudden, we have a sovereign, functional democracy where blacks are empowered now. Things that are taken for granted as the status quo can change, but the people have to feel that they have the power to do so. So how do you feel like you have the power? Stepping into your power is back to vibration. It's about authenticity. It's about loving yourself. It's about accepting yourself. It's about freeing yourself from the masks that were superimposed onto you. Once we have more and more and more people stepping into their divine masculine, their divine feminine. Look at gender. Look at all the gender confusion that's going on right now. We want to be so accepting, and we want to be so woke, and I'm all for LGBTQ and I'm all for sex positivity. But let's also remember what femininity is, and let's also remember what masculinity is, because getting caught in all of this, and in the youth of today, is a complete blurring of the lines of what is masculinity. Women say to me, I don't even know how to recognize a man anymore. And where did the masculinity go? And then same thing with men and femininity. So being open and accepting and loving doesn't mean, negating the values of the past. They can coexist. So we have to relearn some of the old values, like what divine feminine feels like, and what divine masculine holds space and creates a safe container and provides and feels like. Gender roles. I can apply that to everything. It's getting back to the source, going back to nature. Conscious communities are popping up all over the world. People are leaving cities. They want to grow their own food. They want to be responsible for the way that their micro-communities operate. They want to create their own kind of set of community rules. They want to do high vibrational things together. They want to do yoga and meditate and breathe and do cold plunges and whatever floats their boat. So they're organizing. Okay, that's a beautiful human evolution that we're witnessing right now as a counterbalancing force to all of the low vibrational negative forces that are happening in the world. So, that's my magic wand. It's hyper-localizing so that every human feels empowered, true and authentic, and when they step in their power, they will no longer tolerate the things that are being done and change systems, change paradigms, change governments.
Yeah.
That's how we make change.
100%.
Yeah.
I love that. Totally. I love it. So, this podcast is called Pain to Purpose. We spoke a little bit about why you started Breathwork.
Yeah.
But can you give us a bit of a chronological timeline of how you went from your pain point to your purpose? Where did it start?
Yeah.
How did you get there?
I think that something got clouded in me at a very young age. There was a clouding of a deep-rooted feeling that I had that I can do anything. I don't know if I just felt like I was blessed, divinely blessed. And I think I give credit to my parents and my mother in particular. My father was a little bit of a tougher nut to crack, and my mother was like much more hyper-validating. But I lived for their validation, each of them in their own ways. I loved making them proud of me. I loved telling them the stories, of what I'm doing in the world and who I'm meeting and all of that. So I had this feeling that I can do anything and get into any room and meet anybody I need to meet and network however I need to. And I saw myself at the seat I had a seat at the table of power in my own mind.
Wow.
And I grew up middle class, like Ville Saint Laurent. And I think that was a very beautiful thing that I had inside me. But the clouding was where I took that and I mixed it with an obsession with being successful and appearing successful. And that's where I got into trouble. And that's where the beginning of my pain point started. If I really want to root it down, it'd be too easy to say, I was in a tough marriage and needed to end, and so my divorce was my pain point. You got to own your shit.
100%.
You got to own your shit to the extreme degree to say, yeah, but who did you bring into your marriage? What was your contribution to what was going on? And so it predates, all of that to childhood, to your formative years, where you're starting to, in my case, I was like overextended, and I was like, I bought this beautiful house in Westmount, and then, afterwards I sold my company, and I was making my house bigger and renovating it and building this huge business. And on the one hand, I'm proud of like the ambition of it all, like I'm stretching, I'm taking risk, but when I get to the core of why did you need such a big house? Why did you need articles? And for example, when I keynoted C2 Montreal, why did you need to host a big fancy party with all the big shots at your house? Was it marketing? Was it promotion? Was it, that was what I told myself. I'm building a personal brand. We tell ourselves great stories. A thought is a thing, as my naturopath, Christian Limoges, likes to say. And he goes, a thought is a thing. It's just, like any other thought, and it's not real. Love, nature, heart, truth, that's real. There's a microphone here. Sorry. All that. And so I needed to start peeling away those layers. I needed to stand naked. I needed to be okay with, who I am as a person. Even if I wasn't the biggest businessman and the richest man in the world, like I needed to be okay with being appreciated for who I am in my heart and not appreciated for who I am on a CV or who I am because I have articles written about me. And it's tough because sometimes, your feedback loop is, well, you get on a cover of a magazine, and then, your proud father puts it on the coffee table and shows it to all of his friends when they come over. And that's like a kind of a toxic feedback loop, because the absence of that makes the absence of the validation, and then you're striving for that dopamine hit of the validation, and, you get led astray. So that's where the pain point began. And so I needed to relearn who I am and re-fall in love with myself. And it's a process. I'm still doing it, but I've made a lot of gains. And I came out of, a marriage. Like for me, marriage was forever, and there was no question. It never occurred to me. And through the pandemic and through a lot of personal development work and a lot of breath work, it became apparent, and it was the right thing for both of us. So, that ended up, being a big shift in my life. And then I had to mourn and grieve everything that I was losing, not just the person, but the life that you were leading, and all the people in your life, and the way that they were perceiving you, and the way that they now perceived you, and for better or for worse. And, realizing that when you've made yourself super visible in your community, realizing that the downside of that is people will gossip about you. And I learned that people just behind my back gossiping and saying the most outlandish things that are so hurtful. I'm not a celebrity by any means, but I started to understand how celebrities feel when there's some ridiculous stories about them. Madonna makes love with an alien on the National Enquirer. We have proof. Like, shit was said about me behind my back that then came to me. And so I always ask, what's the gift in this? And instead of stressing about it, the gift was learning how to be okay with it. Learning how you felt aligned with the idea that you needed to be contributing to the public discourse and therefore, by definition, making yourself a visible person. Very natural to who I am. Don't need to be hiding. It's not me to be hiding in a hole. But that what's going to come with that is, you can't please everybody all the time, and people are going to say all kinds of crap about you, and it's okay. It's okay, because I know who I am, and I know the good I'm doing, and I know the amount of appreciation there is for what I do. And we're all just doing our best, and we all fuck up, and we all, So the pain points started with that misalignment, and then the real work began. The real work of understanding it and working through it, and forgiving yourself and moving past some of those traumas from the childhood and the past. It's funny to say childhood trauma when you had a really nice upbringing and middle class and like no violence and whatever, but sometimes the most subtle things end up creating scarring for us. And so, our own guilt mechanisms tend to have us saying, how dare you call it trauma when people have lived so much worse things? Shut up, don't be a whining complainer. We have these inner dialogues. Again, a thought is a thing. You have to own your own stuff, and you have to work through it at whatever varying degree of trauma it is. And so, coming out of it, there's a lot of beauty. There's still other things to deal with and hurt and pain and whatnot, but that's the dance of life. Anyway,
I love that.
I hope that answers your question.
It does, and it's a beautiful answer.
Yeah.
And I love that you, I'm going to say, normalize trauma.
Yeah.
Because people are so scared of that word. I have to use the word wound or limiting belief or wiring sometimes, because when you hear the word trauma, it's like, what? I don't have trauma. I wasn't abused. But like you said, we all go through stuff in childhood that affects our decisions as adults. And thank you for that. So I'm going to jump to another topic, which is nature, which is a huge part of your purpose, a huge part of your work. So why is nature so important to you?
You talked earlier about, vibration and asked me, like, how do I explain vibration? And I said, ultimately, that vibration is about how you, feel, right? Like, how do you feel when you're doing a certain thing? Does it feel like an energy drain, or does it feel like a boosting thing? I know intuitively that I feel good in nature. I've known it since I was a kid. We had a country house, and I loved being up there, the lake. I loved hiking. I loved canoes. I loved canoe trips. I loved camp. I love the feeling of touching earth. I remember going on hiking trips and feeling like when I'm rubbing the earth under my feet on the trail, I had a thought, this feels clean, even though it's dirt. And that always, it's because it is. It's clean.
Nature, yeah.
So, and there's minerals and it smells good. It just felt good. So, and then as I evolved, just like starting to become in awe of nature and really understanding it more and more. So when you look at a leaf and you see the sacred geometry of that leaf, and then you start understanding all the systems that are perfect in nature, things that rely on other things in order to survive, food, chains, and the way energy happens, and the abundant energy that we have in this planet, especially clean and renewable energy. Like, we don't need to be burning fossil fuels. We have, between the sun, between the wind, and even now we're starting to discover what a resource the ocean is. The ocean is a constant, in motion, kinetic energy. We have a company in our portfolio that is doing tidal energy. So when you think about high tide and low tide, that's a lot of movement of water. If you were to put a turbine under that water and it were to turn and it were to power a generator connecting to a grid, you could power entire cities, like we're doing in the Bay of Fundy in Nova Scotia.
Wow.
So all these sources of clean, renewable power would have a huge effect on climate. Then I start thinking about food, and all of the food that has to travel to get to you, and the carbon footprint of that travel. Why does a head of romaine lettuce need to fly from California on an airplane to get to the shelf here on the East Coast, and then be devoid of nutrients because it's traveled and it's taken too long since it was cut? What if we grew things close to where people lived, really close, like even in cities, urban farming? And with climate change making weather so erratic, controlled environment farming. And so we're building, a project in the abandoned silos of old Montreal, and we're going to replicate that all around the world, building vertical farms. And on and on and on, like I look at nature. Nature has given us so much. Nature gives me peace, gives me grounding, and I wanted to play my role in giving back to nature. And at this phase of my life, I am totally at peace with being that pebble thrown into that body of water and creating that ripple effect. So whatever I end up doing for nature, I'm good with. I don't need to, have like 100 wind farms that are massive, and I don't need to have, like, I used to think of myself when I started this fund as like, I'm going to be like Blackstone. I'm going to be like a massive, and that was just ego. And I'm just kind of letting it take on whatever form organically it needs to take. I know what my goals are, and safeguarding nature for the future generations, and teaching people to get back to basics and appreciate the simplicity of things, right? So when you think about nature and then you think, counterbalance that with consumerism, okay? I remember the difference of, the difference between wants and needs when it comes to going and buying stuff. Was it we need to get this, or was it the truth was, actually we want to? It's not really a core need. But we convince ourselves that we need a lot of things. And I think that when we surround ourselves with too much stuff, it ends up making for a very complicated life, and when you're too materialistic, I think that it ends up coming with a lot of anxiety too, because you're always comparing yourself. You're always thinking about not the things that you have, but the things you don't have that you have yet to get that other people have. And so you're chasing the dopamine hit of the newly purchased, sweater or sunglasses or whatever, but that is very short-lived. And then you end up replacing it with self-loathing, like, why do I need this? So why I love nature is that it's the counterbalancing energy to that. Nature has a funny way of reminding you that you don't need very much. When you go for a hike in nature, when I go to Costa Rica and it's super hot and I'm like, wearing the minimal amount of clothing because for function, and then there's a lot of dirt roads and bumps and potholes because of rainy season. So the thought that you would drive a luxury car is like ridiculous. So people don't care about image. They don't care about stuff like that. They care about good food, good people, good vibrations, gathering in community, wonderful dances, making a fire and singing, going and admiring the sunset and the sunrise every day like a ritual. Like imagine if you went, like in Judaism, there's Shachrit prayer, right? So that morning ritual of thanking God and Modani. And what if your thanking God was, or thanking whatever you view as divinity, was going and ritualizing every sunset and every sunrise, right? It's easier to do that in nature. It's easier to do that when you live in a beautiful natural place. Harder to do it when it's blocked by smog and buildings. You can, but it's not always natural. You're running to the office.
Yeah.
So.
Wow, you just inspired me right there.
Yeah. So nature brings a less is more vibration. And I believe that less is more is healthy for us. I think that the more we realize that we don't need all of the adornments and all the crap that we think we need, the more we liberate ourselves, we free ourselves, And it's okay to like nice things. Like I'm not saying go wear a white robe and sit on top of a mountain and meditate and like it doesn't have to be taken to the extreme. It's okay to like nice things, but put it into perspective for yourself. So go ground yourself in nature. Go hug a tree. I swear to God, people can laugh at that, but if you go and feel the energy of a tree and don't do it for 2 seconds, like stay there for 5 minutes and hug that tree and feel the solidity of that tree and everything that it has survived. Think about, I remember I used to say that during the pandemic, go hug a tree and remember that it has been through, multiple pandemics and it's still standing. So the trunk, the leaves and the branches, which remind us of expansion that can flow with the wind and flexibility. The roots, which remind us of groundedness, that remind us of family and tradition and everything that we are, right? The tree is a wonderful metaphor. And one last thing I'll say on trees. Trees live in community called forests. And if you would believe this, trees, I tell people in breathwork sessions as they're about in groups to like embark on this journey together, I tell people, you know, a tree that is ailing in a forest, intuitively, the other trees know to send healing energy to that tree.
Wow, I just got chills.
They do it. They do it through the network of branches and through the network of roots.
Wow.
It's amazing. I had edible flowers in my garden, and they were in one pot. And then this spring, all of a sudden, they came back. Because they're, what is it, perennials when it comes back? I always forget the word. But anyway, they came back. But they were in that pot, and then they were in that one, and that one, and that one.
Wow.
And I'm like, how did they travel?
Wow.
Nature is magical.
Wow.
So trees know how to heal each other. And then I said, guys, you're like the trees. Every one of you is like a tree, and this is a beautiful forest of like 500 of you about to go on a breathwork journey. So remember that while you're going through your own stuff, your pain, your trauma, your tears, your visions, whatever you're going through, remember that there is a higher force happening here. There's a connection of all of your vibrations and all of your energy, and healing is going to happen in community. Because the people that are doing really, really well are in their journey are, even without trying to do this, are sending out healing energies to those who need it. And so, you know, we're just like the trees. And if you don't believe me, do we drink the same water as the trees? We do, to stay alive. Do we breathe the same oxygen as the trees? We do, to stay alive. Like, we're just like the trees.
Everything is one.
So that's nature for me.
I love that.
Yeah.
Very inspiring, Stephan.
I deeply love nature.
I see that.
Not just for the photo op, you know, like.
I love that. I love that. Which, this was one of my questions, and it's perfect timing. You're a very spiritual. I'm not going to say you're a spiritual person. You are very aligned with spirituality, and drawn to it. And at the same time, you're, you know, a successful businessman, investor, etc. How do you reconcile? And this is something that I have struggled with for a long time, just the idea of it. How do you reconcile the spiritual and the material? Because at the end of the day, people have to accept that we are spiritual beings.
Yeah.
And yet we live in a material, you know, 3D material plane.
So everything material has some energy, like I talked about this. This chair has energy. Think about, you know, everything that it took to make this chair. There was a founder who had a dream of starting a furniture company and had to take a risk of leaving their safe job. There was a designer who had this beautiful idea to make, like, you know, earth tones and like soft rounded, you know, curves on a chair, a new chair design. There were, you know, the factory employees that were doing the, you know, the hard labor of actually doing the sewing and whatever wasn't mechanized by machines. There's so much intentionality that goes into everything, everything that, you know, they wanted to evoke in terms of how we feel when we sit on this chair. That's intentionality, right? So that came from their heart. So there's energy and intentionality to every material thing. So the first way to kind of, you know, bring these worlds together of spirituality and material world is to realize that even in the material world, there is spirituality. There is spirit in everything. There is energy and vibration in everything. There's intentionality in everything. Okay, so that's the first thing. The second thing is, I love the idea that you can fall fully in love with yourself in all the things that you do and try to be aligned and all these nice words we used. I don't like the idea that you have to compartmentalize your life. There's work you, there's mom you, there's, you know, friends you, there's, you know, conservative friends you and party friends you. There's like, why not have it be just you in all aspects of your life? And what if you removed these self-imposed arbitrary barriers or silos that you've created. A thought is a thing. Remember that. Okay. So what if I'm at a business conference and I'm about to start speaking about, investing in tech and climate and whatnot. And I recognize that the 4 previous speakers were dry as toast. And I noticed that the audience's energy was very low because I feel vibrations now, I feel energy. And I noticed that very obviously, if you take the time to notice, they're all reading their email while the speakers are speaking with their very boring text on screen. And they're just, you see, nobody's inspired, not the speaker, not the people. And so you go, okay, what if before my talk, which hopefully will be energizing and exciting and thought-provoking, what if I exfoliate their energy, their brains, by making them breathe and meditate a bit? And I had a little crisis moment when I first tried this. Will I be taken seriously? Will I be discredited? What will be? And then another voice came and said, stop caring what other people think. Does this feel good to you? Do you want to make them do this? You put a cool track on and you make them breathe. Yeah, you feel like doing that? You think it's going to go well? Do it. Listen to your gut instinct. Don't listen to that mind, that hamster wheel. It's a liar. It's lying to you based on ego and all the other stuff we talked about. So I freed myself to do that. And it went amazing.
Wow.
I did, 5-10 minutes of breath work with the crowd. And then I gave my speech. And then they came and told me, first of all, I had their attention. Nobody looked at their email. And I cracked some jokes, and I moved around the stage instead of being stuck at the podium, because I was the only person that got a headset on. And I walked through the stage. So at the end of it, they came in tears. And they said, thank you, I forgot that I used to do this, and now I'd gotten away from that practice, and thank you for reminding me. And it's true, it did make me absorb your information better.
Wow.
So I was like, oh, I'm onto something. And then I started doing corporate breathworks. I started being invited by companies to do their, you want to do all kinds of bonding experiences. You want to take your employees on a trip. You want to take them at a party. You want to take them for drinking. You want to take them for 5 cassette. You want to take them to climb Tremblant, whatever it is. Yoga. Breathwork is like having its yoga moment of the 90s. Yoga was really becoming popular, and Pilates and all those things. Now everyone is cold plunge and breathwork.
Yeah.
People are discovering the power of this. So applying that as a team bonding thing, bringing out truth, authenticity within a team, and then bringing out liberating team members in corporate environments to feel like they can tell each other the real stuff because they've just had a bonding moment that is undeniable. And so a boss that was belligerent, but nobody ever had the guts to tell them, all of a sudden is getting the truth. Truth comes out in breathwork. And what happens in a company? Productivity skyrockets. Clearly and demonstrably as a result of this thing that they did. So I'm like, oh, I think I'm onto something. The entrepreneur in me is like, oh, I can expand this business. This is amazing. And I can, not just business and money, but good impact, Because it's one thing to go to the woo-woo community that goes to festivals and, granola and are going in mud and wearing yoga pants. It's another thing to go to the people that, for them, wear comfortable clothing for the breath work means they're wearing their Dockers and their loafers and their polo button down, but they didn't wear the tie. And they're wearing a much too tight, belt, and their stomach is falling over it. I'm like, guys, remove your belts, please. Unbutton your pants. I want you to feel free. I told you to wear comfortable clothing. So freeing people in that way. And I started incorporating that. And then on the flip side, I started realizing that the material world and the world of structure and business models and birthing ideas and projects was not second nature to a lot of these people that are very comfortable in their air energy and their spirituality, but then they have a lot of difficulty, getting going, and a lot of traumas and wounds and imposter syndromes and a lot of limiting beliefs. So they always start and then don't finish things. I noticed that was a huge trend. And so while I can tell a business crowd all about things like breathwork as a tool to optimize. I can sometimes use language that they like. Business leaders are using this to optimize performance. Ah, okay, good. I'll listen to them. Jeff Bezos does this, like that kind of thing, right? But then going to these granola people and saying, look, I've been in business and entrepreneurship for a long time. I know how to start things. I know how to identify target markets and business models and understand your addressable market and how to raise money and whether you should get from a fund or whether you should get from angel investors, what types of terms and conditions you should like or avoid, and 100 other things. And I started incorporating that into what I do with groups. So at Envision Festival, I just did in Costa Rica, it's this festival with 7 stages and 10,000 people. It's like Burning Man, but in the jungle. And I am going to deliver this breathwork that I was so proud that I manifested, because the previous year I was walking around as a festival participant going, my God, I should totally give a breathwork here. And through my way of networking, and I got to the owner, and then I became fast friends with Tomer, the owner, who owns like a huge chunk of southern Costa Rica, a lot of development. And he came to see the breathwork. So I got, the breathwork, but I created something. I said, this crowd is filled with like leaders. It's not just a bunch of party goers that just want to party. You've got talks on climate. You've got talks on, the red tent for women's issues and women's rights, indigenous issues, the land, 100 other important topics of the day. There were talks on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. They were at a festival.
Wow.
So I said, I'm going to create a hybrid. Before I do the breath work, I'm going to talk about climate solutions. And I gave real-world examples and innovations and things we're working on to a crowd of very interested people, some of whom came and engaged as strategic partners and other things.
Wow.
So while I can tell a business crowd about breathing at the beginning and then talk about my speech, then I can, before I deliver a breathwork session that's going to make them all live this experience, we can have a really interesting talk about climate solutions. And so the spiritual world and the material world, I'm learning to intertwine them so that I don't have to live in silos, because I don't want to. Because I have a holistic view of myself. So I would like to be the same holistic me in every place I go. I don't want to have to put on a mask to adhere to what is acceptable for that crowd. I want to just be who I am and, inspire who I inspire, piss off who I piss off, and, always in respect and in empathy and love. Does that make sense?
100%. The reason why I asked the question is because when you start, when you gain interest in spirituality and you start going down that path, you often demonize material, the corporate world, money. So you know what? Let's talk about money.
Yeah.
Talk to me about money.
You're right. People demonize the thing that is different than the thing that they're doing. And that is pure ego. A thought is a thing. A thought is a thing. Your higher self doesn't want you to demonize something different. Also,
can I stop you?
Yeah.
Can you tell us what it means, the higher self?
I mean, you can access this in many different things, meditations, transcendental. You can go on a Vipassana retreat and not speak for 10 days and not consume anything, not a book, not a phone, not an electronic, and not even a conversation, a nonverbal conversation with another person when you're meditating. A pure Vipassana, I haven't done it yet, but I'm kind of wanting to do this, is this transcendental thing where you dive deep into yourself. Or you can access this from, I've seen people go on like 5 days or more of being blinded. They put on these blinders and they're in the dark. All these ways of stimulating yourself to go inward, right? So we'll talk, breath work for a second. So you start accessing, so you start breathing, and what happens in the body scientifically is that your CO2 levels are going down. You think you're hyperoxygenating because you're breathing more, but actually your absorption of oxygen is going down. Your CO2 levels are going down. And so when that happens, you activate the pineal gland in the brain. And the pineal gland or pineal gland of your brain is in charge of your intuition, of your higher self's knowing, your inner knowing, your gut instinct, whatever you want to call it. As many naturopaths will tell you, there's more nerve endings in your gut than there are in your brain. Your actual largest brain is here, not here. Like, I mean, they're both a brain, but this is another very important brain, your gut. When your gut is unhealthy, you are unhealthy, not just for the things you eat and the toxicity, but even in terms of negating your gut instincts. So when you start breathing, what happens is that your narratives about yourself, your thoughts, your narratives, and your limiting beliefs melt away. Your masks melt away. So who rises to the surface? Your truth, your higher self. That's why emotions come up. Because when you look at your truth for what it is, you tend to get emotional.
Yeah.
All the emotions. It could be rage, it could be sadness, it could be orgasmicness, it could be joy, all the things. So that higher self, you may see it in a very tangible way, or you may just feel it, or maybe it's a light, or it's going to guide you intuitively in the direction of what's right for you. So back to money, to your question about money. Your higher self wouldn't want you to demonize things like money or other people doing things differently than the way you're doing. That's low vibration, that's ego, that's programming. When that melts away, you're accepting of all ways of doing things. And you're realizing that money is energy, really. And that if you believe of yourself, like remember the law of attractions, you are what you believe, or you are what you are. Sorry, you attract what you are. So if you believe about yourself that you're a constant failure and that you're never going to make money, and that, then you're going to attract that scarcity. If you believe that you're an abundant, always going to find your way to land on your own 2 feet, always going to find a way to get back up if you fall down, always going to find a way to, make a buck, if you believe that to your core, then that's what you're going to attract. And then if you give too much importance to the money as a status symbol and what it makes people think about you, then you are, you're making it unhealthy for yourself. But it's not the money unto itself that's unhealthy, it's your importance you're giving it and the importance of what people perceive about it that is the unhealthy part. So if you can liberate yourself from that, then have a very peaceful relationship with money, okay? But don't ever think that money is going to buy happiness. Living in alignment in your truth is going to buy happiness. Having good relationships is going to buy happiness. Nobody ever said, I want to take, all these wads of cash to my grave. Please put them in my what do you call it? Cercueil.
Yeah, I was just going to say cercueil.
Yeah, but I forgot the word in English.
Coffin.
Coffin, yeah. People on their last days, it's all about other people. It's about energy, it's relationships. It's that. So I think that, if you make money too important and you make comforts too important, you're robbing yourself of being able to thrive in multiple environments, and seeing all the beauty that can come from things that have nothing to do with money. If you travel and you're used to traveling in a 5-star hotel, wonderful, but you can have an incredible experience in, a youth hostel or in a camping environment, in a tent or whatever it is. You can go and meet people authentically off the beaten track, but if you constantly, have an armor of 5-star hotel and car, service taking me places, you're creating a bubble for yourself, an impenetrable bubble of inaccessibility to all of the wonder that life, has to offer. So don't become a slave to comforts and to money, because I really believe that when we are addicted to what we think is comfort and we're constantly striving for comfort, we actually end up feeling really bad and anxious, because we know that our expansion is in our discomfort. We know it intuitively. And every time we, lean into the comfort zones that we create for ourselves, inside we start feeling a little bit uncomfortable. So that's the ultimate irony with comfort, is that we create discomfort from the addiction to comfort. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. So money's an interesting one. But yeah, you don't need to demonize. You can be spiritual and like nice things. You can be out in nature and appreciate the less is more, and then, go and treat yourself to, an upgrade on your flight, or, a beautiful dinner in a restaurant, or whatever you want to spend your money on. But Formula One's a good example. We're about to enter into Grand Prix week. There's all these parties and CNBC, and you need to go, and you need to wear, and you need to be seen this way and wear that way, and you need to be pretty and this and Botoxed and skinny, and you need to have the right shoes and the right bag, and you need to be, Jennifer Campbell from Diary of a Social Girl needs to know who you are, and you need to be in the magazine. And there's a lot of pressure and a lot of needing to be at the right place and the right time, at the Ritz-Carlton, at the this and the, and it does smell of desperation to me a little bit. So I'm not demonizing it, but I'm asking, the open-ended question, why do you need this? Why do you need this? And as a person who needed some of these things before, I'm well positioned to ask that question. If you want to go see your friends and party and have a great time, and you don't give a shit, about whatever judgment and whatever, great. But if you need this to be validated, then you have to start asking yourself questions. If your worth is built in or baked into what party you go to, and how many people that are going to run to 5 parties in one night, and I would argue didn't have fun that night, but the FOMO was too strong, the fear of missing out, and God forbid they shouldn't see that person or be taken in a photograph, in a photo by that cameraman, and it just seems like a lot. It's heavy.
I always say it's never about what you do, it's about what place you're coming from.
Yeah.
What's
exactly.
the intention? Same with money.
Yeah.
Money's not bad or good, it's an energy, it's a resource.
Yeah.
It's about what are you going to do with that, right?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I'm learning to forgive myself and to honor myself and to love myself fully for all the phases of my life. So, if there were times when I appeared to others as somebody flashy, somebody who was, appearing richer than maybe he really was, or any of that, I had to make peace with that. There's always somebody who's going to have more, and there's always going to be, things from your past that you're nourishing and feeding, like I described earlier. It's part of your dance, of your journey. And if you're going to beat yourself up over it, you're going to prevent yourself from moving forward. So honor all the phases of your life. And today, I don't care about flashiness at all. At all. I drive this car. It's a nice car, but it's not like the super fancy car I used to drive, which I got too much attention for, like during F1 week, people would clap for me in the street, yo, bro, respect. I think I pound my heart a lot. I got rid of all that. But today where I'm at is I have a very, in old Montreal, I have a very small garage, right? So once in a while when there's snow in the winter, I'll scuff the sides, and I got little scratches, and I got little bumper issues, and I got a little thing that fell. Zero fucks given. Older me was pedantic, was anal. I got to go fix it. I got to take it to the body shop. I got to this. I wanted everything to be perfect all the time. Today, I really fully have embodied that person I used to admire, who used to say, it's just a car. It just gets you from point A to point B. Who gives a shit? It's scratched. Okay, when I have time, I'll take it. I don't care. And I love that. I love that about myself.
I love that.
So instead of being angry at former me that needed it to be perfect and washed and clean every day, I'm kind of in love with the guy that doesn't give a flying fuck. It's okay.
And the silver lining to that, of accepting yourself and not being a perfectionist, and stop judging yourself, even judging the past version of yourself.
Yeah.
The more you do that, and the more you can be that way towards others.
Yeah.
You judge others less, and you expect others to be less
perfect. Truth.
Right? That, I think, is so powerful and liberating.
Well said.
Thank you. Stephan Ouaknine said well said.
Very, very smart thing that you just said. It's so true.
Yeah.
It's so true. And that's why I said in your magic wand question, it starts with yourself.
Yeah.
It starts with the individual, self-love, empowerment. And then from that place, let's join together and let's make change and let's accept and let's honor, let's guide, let's help.
Yeah.
You know?
It's funny because that question actually came from my little 10-year-old.
Yeah.
My love. He asked me, Mom, if you had a magic wand or if you could choose any superpower, what would it be? And my purpose is the healing world. And I said, well, I would want everybody to heal. And he said, what do you mean? Why? And I said, well, and when I say heal, I mean become your authentic self.
Yeah.
Strip the layers, the masks, the beliefs, the wounds, the traumas, to come back to your true self.
Yeah.
Because if every single human being does that, there's no more wars. I mean, it's a bit what you said earlier.
Yeah.
There's no more wars. There's no more hate. There's no more separation. There's, the world is healed. So
we have to be very careful because you could think about this, now I'm going to say a very macro thing, but you could think about all of these books that were written, like A Brave New World or Anthem, all of these dystopian future, books where the world is very peaceful and beautiful and there are no wars and there is no crime and everybody wears the same outfits and there's no comparisons and there's no, there's no fashion, there's no materialism, and it looks like these beautiful utopian societies, but with insidious power dynamics that are hiding under the surface, where the people that seek to maintain this harmony impose incredibly draconian rules in the name of harmony. And so we as humans need to be very careful not to buy into a future narrative of you need to trade harmony for your freedom. You need to trade away your freedom for some sort of a harmony. No. Because somebody is always going to benefit from your loss of freedom in terms of benefit in terms of money, benefit in terms of power, benefit in terms of control. So things are going to be done in the name of your your safety. And powers will get, or freedoms will get stripped away from you in the name of, decarbonizing, let's say in climate change terms, or we saw it in the pandemic, of course, not to get into that whole conversation.
No, we won't.
But in retrospect, I think we see things a lot more clearly. And a lot of the people that were called conspiracy theorists are now jumping up and down going, you see? And then the other people that were much more inclined to just follow the mainstream narrative, kind of are like, we don't want to talk about COVID anymore. We've moved on. Because it's easier to not question where you were led. That's a harder conversation. The easier conversation is to say, we've moved on and there was a virus and it's all safe now and we're good. Until the next thing. So we need to remain heart-centered and remember who we are and remember what our core values are. And if your core values are nature, less is more, truth, authenticity, and freedom, then you're going to need to be vigilant, because in the name of your own security, because systems of control can tell you what the threat is. They can even to an extent invent a threat. And then they can tell you they have the solution for the threat. And then they can tell you the price for the solution is some of your freedom. And then it's a very slippery slope. So foreseeing that this is a trend, potentially, a lot of humans are gathering now in communities, conscious communities, eco communities, off-grid things. They just kind of want to be as independent as they can. And that's an interesting trend.
Maya Angelou said, I love this quote, she said, real love always comes with freedom.
Yes, absolutely. Because freedom suggests that you're free to feel how you want to feel, be who you are, and love the way you want to love. If love comes with a price, like, I'll love you, but you must do A, B, C, D, and E for me. And so that's conditional love. And the true love, the truest form of love, is unconditional and being willing to love without receiving it in return, and being willing to let go of somebody who you love dearly but doesn't want this with you. You know, if you really love them, you do have to set them free. It's true. And you can end up being sad about it, but you can also be proud of yourself for having loved purely. Having accessed the purest form of the vibration of love. So when you ask what would love do, well, love would set that person free if they and if they are meant to come back, they'll come back. But if you try to force things, if you try to insist, if you try to shame somebody into staying or whatever the situation, then you're not really acting out of pure love. You're acting out of conditional love at best, and at worst, you're acting out of anxious attachment styles, or you're acting out of fear, you're acting out of scarcity, you're acting out of abandonment issues, all the things.
Yeah.
And you're calling it love,
Yeah.
but it isn't what it really is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One more question and then we're going to wrap it up. I ask this to every guest on the podcast. So, pain to purpose, you went from, struggles, pains, and challenges, which brought you to your purpose. If you could go back in time, would you change anything? Or would you keep it as is because that's what brought you to where you are?
I'm going to really think about that.
Take your time.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, the the stock answer is to say, no regrets, wouldn't change a thing, led me to who I am, it's all perfect, it's all part of my journey. But I think if I'm really, really truthful, I think I would have liked, to have been more relationship-centered sooner, to have been more heart-centered sooner, to have been more love-centered. I was always in love with love, but to have been more focused on that and a little bit less into the, the image and all that stuff. But, that's an answer to your question. If you could go back in time and change it, would you change it? So the answer is, yeah, I would change those things, and I probably would have an even better quality of life today than I do today, because I'm kind of fixing some mistakes from the past and still working on that. But that doesn't mean I don't honor and love my journey. That doesn't mean that I beat myself up over it, more than I should. It's still a beautiful, immaculate journey of moving through that fire, coming out the other end, continuing to work on myself, continuing to try to make a difference in the world, both in climate terms and in terms of individual vibrations, helping people. That all feels good, and I'm happy I do all of it, and excited about where it's all going, not needing to, quantify it or know exactly how it's all going to go, just knowing that I'm going in the direction of what feels right. So I can be in both places at once. I can be at peace with the things of the past and focused on who I am today and where it's all going, but at the same time answer you truthfully and say, but if I could have changed it, yeah, I would have.
I love it. I love it. Two truths can coexist.
Yeah.
I love it. Stephan, thank you so much for
You're welcome.
being here. It was such an inspiring, beautiful conversation. Thank you for sharing your wisdom, your experience so vulnerably with our audience, because it takes a lot of courage to be vulnerable and truthful and authentic, which is the theme here. So thank you.
Thank you to you for creating the container, for stretching out of your comfort zone and doing a podcast. And
thank you.
I think you're going to have good success with it.
Thank you.
And I hope it's going to make you feel like you're aligned with all the other ways that you want to help people. And if you guys found any of this helpful or interesting or have any questions for me, you can always DM me, you can always send me a message. Always happy to to be in connection with the people that are touched by whatever it is that I spew out of this mouth.
I'm going to post
this
all
heart.
the links on the bio. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And to our tech guy, Rob, thank you very much, man.
The best.
What's that?
He's the best.
He's the best. He's cool.
Thank you so much.
All right.